Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is another wonderful episode on the world's #1 live stream show on the business of culture and the culture of business, episode 183, an important topic today on the issues surrounding women's equity around the world. We've just come out of a whole month where we've celebrated women. Not that a month is enough, thank you very much, but we are going to expand on that and keep this conversation going with somebody who is really passionate about this work and operates on a global scale and has achieved so much on a global scale. Who better to bring her on? And you will absolutely love to hear from her. Stick around. Welcome back.
Hello to Chaps, Mini Cultures, the world's leading program live broadcast on the business of culture and the culture of business. Man, I love saying this more and more. This sounds
kind of It's kind of, we might wear out our welcome a little bit with this. We might have to come up with
we're selling this. We're selling this. This is it.
Absolutely. But what we are not is the world #1's expert on women's equity around the world. I would probably guarantee that we're not. We're certainly not.
No.
Right? Absolutely.
I heard you know somebody in that arena.
We do. And we've been very, very blessed to invite her onto this episode today. Please welcome the wonderful Naomi Seddon to the broadcast of Two Chaps Mini Cultures. Hello, mate. How are you?
Good, thanks.
I'm happy to say that Naomi is a fellow Aussie, and not that I'm any biased in this situation, but at least I will understand exactly what Naomi's talking about.
Come on, it's not that hard.
At least she's not from Sydney, so it's all good.
Oh, see, we went there. No, that's right. Well, welcome, Naomi. Thank you for joining us. This has been a long time coming. You and I have had discussions, and we've met in person. And I'm just, I can't really explain how much in awe I am of a person like Naomi, who has absolutely achieved so much in. Not only from our small little corner of the world in Australia, a young girl from Melbourne, the streets of Melbourne, now operating on a global scale, both in the field of law and in many, many different platforms. So I don't think that we're ever going to do your achievements justice on a small episode like this, but thank you so much for joining us. So it is that we wanted to talk about some of your work in women's equity, your observations of how it plays out in the world in different parts, different cultures. And of course, from your perspective as somebody who has access to the actual laws and the ability to interpret those laws and their impact in those countries. So that's a simple question, right? You can speak to that.
That was only one question, right?
Right. A simple question. Yeah. So I'm actually writing a book at the moment on women's health issues and the workplace. And the reason this came about is really a few things, but it started for me as a result of my personal journey. So I am a lawyer in Australia. I moved to the US and became a lawyer qualified in the US, and then I became qualified in New Zealand, and then I sat the UK bar exam. So I am a bit of a global citizen, like probably a lot of your guests are on this program. And the work that I do really does focus around assisting companies to go global and assisting companies with things like global policies, implementing global benefits programs and plans, and, consistency on a global scale across the organization. And so I do have a good sense around some of these issues, and a big part of that is actually culture, believe it or not. I'm sure you do believe it given the nature of your program, but often when we're looking at some of these types of issues, we come in with a very country-centric focus. And when we're a global organization and we have people in different parts of the world, we really have to break that down and start thinking about some of these issues in a different way. And so how I ended up here is really as a result of my story. I moved to the US and met my husband over here. And at the time we decided we wanted to start a family fairly quickly because we were both older. I had no idea at the time that I had any issues, but I quickly discovered after losing 4 babies within about a 18-month period that I had some significant issues, and that was the start of my journey. So apart from, the pregnancy losses that I suffered, I also have endometriosis and I have 2 blood conditions, which is why I wasn't able to carry a baby. So over about a 2-year period, I had over 100 tests and I went through 9 surgeries. So it was a lot. And all the while I was promoted to partner within the law firm, and I was managing a very busy international practice and doing a lot of international travel in that time as well. So it was a tough period of my life. Needless to say, my health continued to suffer. I ended up having a hysterectomy, and then I still had to have further surgeries after that because of my endometriosis. And what I've realized since is that I was having episodes where my body was, going into fight or flight mode because I was working so hard and I was continuing to need these surgeries to manage my condition, but it was worsening because I wasn't allowing myself the time I needed to actually heal. But also, there's a mental aspect of that as well. I needed to grieve. My body was going through a lot and I had suffered, child loss as well. That wasn't the end of my story, though, because my husband and I were very fortunate to be able to have twins via a surrogate. But you would think that should be the easy part of my story. And in fact, it was the hardest out of everything that I've been through because my babies were born at 28 weeks, so they were severely premature. And then they spent 3.5 months in the hospital fighting for their lives. So it was a rough journey, to say the least. But I am really blessed for the experiences that I went through. I'm really blessed that I have beautiful girls now, and they're very healthy and happy little girls. But I'm also really blessed that I learned a lot along the way. And one of the things that I learned is that as employers and also as leaders within organizations, we need to be doing better around these issues. We need to better support women in the workplace, and we have to start recognizing that female health issues actually are workplace issues. And I think, we've done a pretty bad job of that generally to date. And I get a lot of people saying to me, well, why? Why are they workplace issues? Why should I care about this stuff as an employer? I'm trying to make money. I'm a business owner, and I understand all of that. But let me tell you this, if we continue on this trajectory that we're on right now, it is going to take at least 100 years. 100 years before we see any equality in the workplace. Now, the situation has worsened with COVID, and in fact, there's more women withdrawing from the workplace than ever before, and that's a problem. I mean, think about it this way. My daughters will likely never see equality in their lifetimes, and that's a situation that is just completely unacceptable to me. So we have to find a way to move the needle and get better on this issue. And in my view, the first step in doing that is to recognize that women are different. We are fundamentally different than men. We have different needs when it comes to the workplace, and we have to get better at recognizing that and finding ways to support women in the workplace. So that's really what I am on a journey now to do, to educate people about the link between productivity and wellness and why it actually makes business sense for your organization to care about this. And it doesn't have to be expensive programs that are put in place, although there are amazing employees around the world that are doing some fantastic things in this space. But it can be little things to assist women as well. Things like women who are undergoing, going through a period of menopause in their life, they also have pretty unique needs when it comes to the workplace. So it can be things as simple as offering fans or breaks as needed, flexibility for women who are going through things like endometriosis or other fertility issues. It can really assist somebody when they're suffering to be able to work from home, for example. It may mean the difference between not having to take a day of leave and actually being able to continue on with their job. So I'm on a mission to try and educate more companies about benefits programs and policies that they can introduce in their own workplaces to assist women, so that we can try and, affect some change and some improvement in this area. So that was a pretty long answer for you there, but it's a complicated issue.
Oh, I think it's a great answer. What I'm hearing is an affirmation that maybe it's not equality. I mean, it is equality, but it's a definition of equality.
Correct.
So do people like us, like me and Christian, who come from this very male-centered, where the world revolves around us, then do we then kind of have to kind of pause and say we're not really expecting the women around us to just replicate what we're doing and act like us. That's not pure equity, because it's about the equity of opportunity, and though, as you're describing there, that opportunity comes through provisions that allow the space for women to perform at their very best, at their standards, not our standards, right, in terms of that. I don't know whether I've said that the right way, but You
absolutely have. And in fact, one of the chapters in my book is called What is Equality? And I talk about this exact issue, that when we think about equality, we have to stop applying the same rule, practice, standard, whatever you want to call it, to men and women in the workplace, because we are different and we do have different needs. So what equality means to me is probably, and what I need to be able to reach a point where I feel like I have equal opportunities in the workplace, are going to be different from you, so that is definitely the start of, understanding a better approach around this issue. We really have to break it down and start thinking about what equality actually means from one person to another. And that is where we'll end up with a situation where we can find ways to better support women in the workplace. Because, what my needs are in the workplace as a woman at my age are also going to be very different to the needs of a woman, say, in her 20s, and a woman in her, 50s or 60s as well. So that's another aspect of it as well. It's not just, one rule that applies to men versus women. We need to be thinking more about flexible ways to assist all employees in the workplace, and what that looks like from one employee to the next is going to be very different.
Yep. I want to pick up on a comment that was made here right when our program started by Janet Turner, who says she's looking forward to hearing what we're talking about today, because maybe an hour or two ago, this very Janet, who works in the employee mobility, or in general in the mobility industry, she posted something on LinkedIn that I have to read out to give you the context. She says, "Is being too, quote unquote, too emotional a character defect or part of a person's character to be embraced? Is being too emotional considered being needy or equal to being needed to you? Are women more emotional than men?" So that was basically her question that she asked today on LinkedIn. There's a series of comments underneath it, and I didn't read all of them, but I think the consensus has become that this being too something or too little of something else is an arbitrary measurement set up by a predominantly male work environment, right? So who gets to decide what is the default or the neutral setting? So have we at least accomplished moving that male-dominated neutral setting further into the actual center, or are we still far off with that?
I heard Julia Gillard talking about this exact issue in a webinar a few weeks ago, and I found what she had to say really interesting and quite inspiring. She was talking about the fact that, you know, exactly what you said, we tend to put labels on men and women like this, when in fact it's not true. There's going to be a lot of men that are very sensitive human beings as well, and there's going to be a lot of women that don't have those types of characteristics as well. So I think to label, you know, anyone, male or female, like this is a big mistake. The other thing I would say is that there is so much research to show that having a diverse workforce actually increases productivity, increases financials. Companies are more successful when they have, you know, more of a balance, not just between men and women, but also, you know, diversity in races, diversity in backgrounds, diversity in cultures. So, you know, there is no right or wrong leader. And I think we need to start thinking about that when we're looking at these types of issues, that there is certainly a place in organizations for people who are strong. There is a place within organizations for people who are more empathetic towards employees, and they're going to have different roles to play within organizations. But who wants to work in an organization where everybody looks and sounds and behaves the same? And statistically, the research shows us that they are not the most productive workforces anyway. So I think we really need to start recognizing this. But in my view, it also starts at the top. And this is something that I've talked about extensively in some of the articles that I've written, some of the other, you know, online publications that I've done lately, and also in my book. One of the things that I recognized about myself was what a poor job I did as a leader for other women within the organization, because I am very fortunate to be in a role where, you know, other women may look up to me and they're looking at what type of role model that I am demonstrating. And by behaving in the way that I did, by pushing through, by not taking the time to heal, I was inadvertently setting an example to other women. And I am not proud of that, because it's not okay. There has to be a better way than just simply saying that we have to push through. So the other thing that I would say to that is, you know, I have made a lot of changes in my life over the last, you know, 2 years. And one of the things that I've done is actually start taking time to introduce wellness into my life. I run almost every day now. I know, you know, that type of exercise is not for everyone, but I've made a conscious effort, because of my endometriosis and the fact that I needed to manage it more effectively in particular. I've made a conscious effort to put wellness into, you know, my schedule. And I have to tell you, last year I had the most successful year of my entire career. And you know what? I had time for myself. So I fundamentally believe this is so important and crucial, and that pushing through and working yourself like a dog, you know, and not taking time to heal, or, you know, taking the time to put your hand up and say, hey, I'm going through this and I need A, B, or C, is actually a big mistake. And it ends up resulting in the opposite of what you actually want to achieve. And that is being a successful, productive, you know, member of society, employee. It also has, you know, an impact on your personal life as well. And that's something that we should not underestimate.
Maybe the old Romans knew something all along, right? Mens sano, no, what is mens sana in corpore sano? A healthy mind and a healthy body, right? Yeah. Now, I wanted to say something earlier, but it didn't fit in. But it doesn't fit in now. But I do want to say that I'm sorry to hear about your loss. Thank you. That must have been devastating.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I lost a little boy at 5 months, so that was, yeah, heartbreaking. I mean, for any woman that goes through that, any family that goes through that, men and women, you know, we both we both experience loss. Just because a woman's carrying doesn't mean a man is not affected by a child loss. But yeah, I mean, any woman that goes through that, my heart goes out to them. And this is one of the areas where I think we need to do better. I'm really proud to say that I actually sit on the board of a number of companies, and one of the companies I'm on the board of is an ASX company, Megaport. And I'm so proud to be part of this organisation because I am head of the Benefits and Remuneration Committee, and I have had the ability to come in and start affecting some change within the organisation around some of these issues. And we're one of the first companies in the world to introduce paid early loss pregnancy leave. So and we've introduced that for all our employees globally. So if you lose a child at 4 weeks or 30 weeks, it doesn't matter. We want people to take the time that they need to heal and grieve. And I really encourage more companies to consider offering these types of benefits, because as someone who's experienced it, I can tell you how important that is.
So when you talk about that, you're driving change from within an organization. So that's something that really needs the impetus of the leadership and the convincing. You have to convince the leadership, right, of the value of this, right? That's one thing. In a legal sense, though, that in terms of the work you do, also interpreting the laws and the prevailing protocols in different countries around the world, is there also a kind of the other side of the coin is encouraging governments to perhaps when companies are not doing it themselves to actually impose these, and some people push back on this, get government out of my business and all that kind of stuff. But this is so important to the health of the community that there's also a role for governments to be encouraged to write within the laws and structures of their society some of the things that actually have to force companies to do this in the countries that they operate in. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm actually on the board of Surrogacy Australia because of my journey, and something I didn't mention was that commercial surrogacy is illegal in Australia, and in fact it's a crime in a couple of the states in Australia. So it's a pretty serious issue. And one of the things we're doing is trying to advocate for change. But the other aspect that I see where this occurs and where it is important, and certainly government has a huge role to play in this, is around things like clients who want to do the right thing and try and assist their employees with some of this employee benefits programs. So surrogacy is something that actually comes up quite a lot in this space because of the challenges around the world. There are certain countries where surrogacy is illegal. Commercial surrogacy is not legal. So for some of my clients who have wanted to introduce benefits where they, assist to pay for the surrogacy process, that can be met with some legal challenges. And that's where we really do need government to step in and, start thinking about this, because if we put our head in the sand, it's a pretty ignorant, view. People are going to find a way. And I can absolutely tell you, when I was doing ABC Sunday Night Story and we were going through the process of trying to obtain parental rights for our children and citizenship in Australia, one of the things that I said, and I stand by this, I wanted to be a mother and I would have done whatever it took. People are going to find a way. We can't simply say, well, it's illegal and, people are not going to do it. They're going to find a way to be parents if that's something that is really important to them. So we have to find better ways to support people when they do go through this journey. And, employers do have their hands tied a little bit on some of these issues because they can't introduce policies where it's going to be breaching the law. So absolutely, government has a huge role to play. I'll tell you another area where it's really important, and that's in things like endometriosis. I mean, it's still amazing to me that 1 in 10 women globally have endometriosis. And currently it's taking approximately 7.5 years for a woman to be diagnosed. And do you know why that is? It's because there's no funding for research. I mean, it's amazing to me that in most countries in the world, there is no funding for this, no government funding. We've got to get better on some of these issues. We just simply must. And the figures are increasing for a reason, because they believe that endometriosis, I mean, while it can certainly be genetic, one of the reasons why women do suffer symptoms is often because we're waiting longer in life to start having children. And so that can be one of the triggers for symptoms. And so, you know, if we really genuinely care about trying to, you know, reach a point where we have workplace equality, then this is an issue that's directly related to that. You know, we've got to find better ways to support women, but we also have to have the research and, you know, be doing a better job of trying to find a cure, trying to find better treatments for women, and better ways of managing things like, you know, pain and the other associated symptoms that go along with this. And I know that most men get uncomfortable when I talk about, you know, menstruation, but let me tell you this. When I was a young lawyer in my second job out of law school, I remember that I was in a client meeting, and I remember knowing that I had bled through my clothes, and I was in a meeting with clients, and I knew that at some point, I remember like sweating and thinking, how am I going to deal with this situation? Like, and I can't tell you, like, I still remember that as if I was back there during that time. But these are real issues that women are dealing with every day.
Yep. As a father of two daughters and a husband, I can attest to that. You, in the very beginning, you said that cultural aspects play a role in this as well on this topic. So you also told us that you're a glutton for punishment because you passed the bar in Australia, in New Zealand, which is probably the worst punishment for any Aussie, and in the UK, and
I've taught him well.
US
I've taught him well.
Well,
so you can practice in 4 countries, or where else can you practice?
So a lot of my colleagues and I, when we're who are part of the international team, we do a lot of large global international projects. So, you know, we do have a large global team, and obviously we have attorneys included in that team who are all over the world. So I tend to look after Australia and New Zealand for the firm, but certainly do manage a lot of multinational, you know, large projects for clients. But yes, we do have a very different system in a lot of these countries that you mentioned. So there's not actually a bar exam in every country. So Australia doesn't have a bar exam. You pass, right, you know, you do your law degree, and then you have to do a period in a law firm before you qualified. New Zealand, I did not have to do an exam for. I was able to waive in, but obviously I had to get across the law, and I have, you know,
you mean the standards are so low there that it was easy for an Aussie to.
Well, it works both ways. Kiwis are allowed into the Australian system as well. So I can't.
My piggyback question, though. So sorry if I'm interrupting here, but my piggyback question is: so having seen the legal field in so many countries, and being familiar with the legal frameworks that either enable or prevent equity and equality for women in the workplace, how did culture appear to you? How did culture appear as a factor to you? Let's say, is New Zealand really that gender equality paradise compared to, let's say, the United States? Or is that simply a media hoax? How did you experience that?
Well, a lot of this is driven from the top, right? And when we look at that, we look at government, because they do drive a lot of this. New Zealand has a very progressive female leader. A lot of the policies, a lot of the laws are driven by, you know, a party that is very open to these ideas. And New Zealand, actually, I should mention this, just last week it was introduced early loss pregnancy leave for everybody across the country. So they're doing an amazing job in this space. But But honestly, in a lot of countries, it is driven by the top, and there are differences, from one culture to the next. I'll give you another example, though. Even in countries where governments are doing things in this space, often because of the inherent culture that's existed for hundreds and thousands of years, just because a policy is in place, it may not be utilized. And Japan is a good example of that. Japan actually have menstruation leave, and because of the culture and the stigma around that issue, it's something that actually isn't utilized very often, which is unfortunate. But there are countries that are doing better things in this space, but it also does take a shift and for change to happen, and for people within organizations, within leadership, and within government to encourage people to access these types of benefits and change their mindset around some of these benefits. And the UK are doing a good job around this in relation to the menopause and the workplace laws. So we've got a long way to go, but certainly culture definitely is an important aspect to consider in this. And the other area where I see it play out often, because I am working, across various countries, and I'm working with, organizations that may have a manager based in the US, for example, and then managing a team in Australia or New Zealand. It can be an issue when we have management that maybe don't understand the culture in the country that they have employees. They don't understand the legal, framework, the regulations, the requirements in that country. So I do see it play out in that sort of, setting as well. But also when we're talking to organizations about implementing some of these types of benefits plans, it is really important that we don't adopt a view where we think, well, the standard for leave in the US is, or, Australia is about 15 days or 20 days. But in Europe, we know that, market rate says 28, but we think that's ridiculous because it's not something that we're used to. We need to actually recognize that just because it's something that we're not used to does not mean that it is inappropriate for that particular workforce. And that is a cultural issue. And I do see a lot of cases where companies, fail to take into account culture when making these types of decisions.
Yeah, it's often a discussion we have with our clients, where they might have a visceral reaction to the settings or the implications or the implementation of laws in the countries that they're trying to expand in or they've got operations in. Oftentimes, if you kind of take a step back and give them the baseline, some of the insights into what has influenced the culture and its development over a number of historical years, you can then kind of round it out by saying, it's only natural to see that these laws and these types of protocols exist now because they are a result of the culture that the people have been brought up around. And that's a kind of a less threatening way to come at somebody to say, well, you're just getting it wrong and they're getting it right. That's a very binary way to look at it. Once you go deeper and put it in the context of the culture, it becomes much more easy to understand. That's just been my experience. So that's great. So you said you've got a book coming out, Naomi. So you're in the middle of this, and I know, is it the actual Milk and Margaritas title? I think you're using that title, yeah?
It is, and when you read the book,
Milk and Margaritas.
Yeah.
I have a feeling the two don't go together very well. I hope you're drinking them separately.
They do. Let me tell you why. No, it comes, for years I've known that writing a book was something that I wanted to do because I want to be able to tell my story, but that's not the main focus of the book. I want to be able to shed light on this issue and give organizations, leaders, and employees the tools that they need to start discussions within their own organizations to try and start thinking about some of these issues and improve opportunities for women. But where the name comes from is this. While my husband and I were trying to create a family, i.e. trying to create milk, every time we would suffer some other heartache, we would always go to our favorite Mexican restaurant and drown our sorrows in a margarita. And so that is, fundamentally where the name Milk and Margaritas came from. And so for years I've known that was going to be the name of my book.
Oh, that's
that
great.
means also that the goal is to drink less margaritas in the future and drink delicious other drinks.
Correct. Yes.
All right. So what would you tell men like Brett or myself, or even more boneheaded members of our species? What can men do to, regardless of the legal framework that may or may not exist in the workplace or in the country where they work, what can we do on an organizational level to move the agenda forward towards more equity? What are some of the easier, low entry level things that men can be allies in?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that men can do. I think one of the things is to start thinking about mentoring some of the younger females within the organization, because, we need mentors, men and women, and having a supporter within an organization can be a really powerful thing. That's the first thing I'd say. Secondly, start looking for signs, start asking your employees, are they okay? But also more than that, I think, one of the things, especially for me, I definitely experienced this. People often say, are you okay? And what is the answer that most people are going to say immediately? Yeah, I'm fine. Very rarely is someone going to say, well, actually, no, I'm not okay. This is going on. And it's purely because most of us, when we ask, are you okay, don't actually want to hear the answer. I mean, that's the reality. We don't. We expect it, but we do it because it's a nicety. It's a nice thing to do. We think it's the right thing to do. But do we actually want to hear the real answer? I don't think in most cases we do. And so rather than saying, are you okay, a much better thing to say is, listen, I don't want to pry into your personal life, but I've noticed A, B, and C. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. If you need anything, please come to me. And here are some things that we could offer you in case you need some assistance in this space. That is much more likely to generate a very different response, because if I am offered A, B, and C, I'm much more likely to say, gee, thank you. Yes, I'd love that. Or actually, that's great. Thank you so much. But, really, this is what I need, because you're opening the door to a much more open and honest conversation. So I think that's a big part of it. Thirdly, I would say start having discussions, start looking at your, if you are in a leadership position, if you are a member of a board, start asking questions, start saying, listen, what are the benefits programs that we're providing our people? How are we supporting people in the workplace? And this is something that organizations have done through COVID. It is, it's something that everybody should be looking at more generally around what are the needs of the organization, but also, if you want to be an employer of choice and you want to attract a more diverse workforce, then these are things that you need to be looking at, on an ongoing basis. And it's certainly something that I've implemented at Megaport, a commitment to our employees that I am not just going to say, okay, the job's done now. I've done my part. I've looked at the benefits and I walk away. I want to be continually going back to our employees and looking at what's working, what's not, and making a commitment to our organization and our people that we will continue to try and strive for better, because there are always ways that we can be doing better on these issues.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you. Those are immediately applicable, actionable items. So thanks for that. I made notes, mental notes, and it's recorded, so we can go back to it. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when's the book coming out?
Well, there's a book. Well, I'm not finished it yet, but I'm on a deadline now, so it should be by the end of the year. That's what I'm aiming for. But there'll be lots of other tips and tricks in the book as well.
Look out
for it, folks. Milk and Margaritas on your books shelves. We will keep you informed, and we will read the book. We have to read the book. It is required. It will be required reading, by the way, if you are hoping to continue to watch the #1 live streaming show on the business of culture. It will be continued reading. Otherwise, we're not going to let you tune in.
Yes, exactly.
So, thank you very much, Naomi. We are so blessed. This has been wonderful. This is. I hope that if you're watching this, you've taken some notes. And please, in the comments, if you've got any comments, questions, or reach out to Naomi directly. You know, Naomi is becoming a bit of a rock star, like I say, in this space. So you'll be able to find LinkedIn, usual kind of socials, right? LinkedIn.
I have to interrupt you. I just have to interrupt. This was the Australian version of low-key praise, beginning to become a rock star. That woman is already rocking it.
Oh, yeah, sorry, already a rock star. Well, I know Naomi, and typical kind of tall poppy syndrome. Just kicks the ball out of the park, but it's not really. It's just an everyday thing for me, but that's fine. Thank you so much. We're very, very honoured to have you on, and we hope to. When the book comes out, maybe we should do this again. We should.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Will there be an audio book version? And
there will.
Great. And if there was a movie made out of it, who would you like to play you?
Oh, that's a great question. I haven't actually thought about that before, but probably Reese Witherspoon.
Nice. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right.
Is that a little bit about the Legally Blonde movie? Is that the Legally Blonde kind of? Do you like that movie? Is that a good representation of?
No, I'd hope not.
Probably
not. No, that's not why I thought about it. Actually, I like that she's a bit sassy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think she'd do a really good job of playing my roles.
Good.
All right. We're calling her agent now. All right.
Yeah. Quick dial. He knows everybody, by the way. Yeah. So, well, thank you again, Naomi. This has been great, and we'll obviously be in touch and keep us informed in your journey and the book development of the book and that kind of thing. So this has been Two Chaps, Many Cultures, episode 183. We're getting close to 200. That's a bit scary, but anyway, good fun. And we hope to see you tomorrow for another episode. And in the meantime, put your comments, share it with your friends, especially today's. I mean, this is content for everybody. Share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues, share it with whoever you can. Put your comments, subscribe to our YouTube channels. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you again, Naomi. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Naomi.
Bye.